All right, so the last 2 weeks, Aaron and Curtis focused on Kings Hezekiah, Manasseh, Josiah, and the later kings within the southern kingdom of Judah. This evening, we are going to transition back to the northern kingdom of Israel, and we're going to look at the chronological order of its demise, otherwise known as the fall of Israel. So to do that, I want to take a step back kind of to a few weeks back, about 3 weeks back, when Aaron talked about Jehu. What do we remember about Jehu? Just so we can refresh our minds. What's that? Man of blood. Yep. What else? He completely obliterated. He did not. Yeah, he did not. Um, Close, right? Close, but did not. What's that? Baal worship. Yeah, Baal worship is what his duty was to do. So he was called on by Elisha to be anointed king over Israel. If you remember, the Lord had already prophesied to Elijah back in 1 Kings chapter 19 that he would appoint Jehu to kill those involved in the worship of Baal. Jehu was the Lord's avenger. He took that to the full extreme. He was an instrument of God. I think Brother Jackson mentioned in that class that we were speaking on Jehu about him being somewhat of a politician. I think that's he did the work when it was fitting for him. Correct? Did he follow completely in what God wanted him to? What's that? On that part he did, but for everything did he? Right? No, he did not. He did the work that was fitting to him. So when Jehu was anointed king, this signaled a major shift in the book of Kings, as well as the history of ancient Israel, which is why I kind of want to start back here to deliver from there, because I really feel like the fact that Jehu was placed at the time when he was, it's relevant to what we're getting to tonight. So what was different about Jehu than the previous kings that had been appointed to Israel? What was different? He was a general. Who is it? Was he of the family of Ahab or Omri? Omri? He was not, right? And that's the reason I bring us back to this point, because this was the beginning of the end for Israel. And I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell a little story. So bear with me, and then we'll get into the word. So there's a story that is told of two young men in a canoe sailing down the river to Niagara Falls. Although the water was calm, they were approaching the area where the water began to pick up speed as it is headed for the falls. A man on the shore, sensing the danger, called out, "Young men, watch out! The rapids are ahead." But the young men, who heard the warning, did not heed the call. Instead, they went on laughing and joking, paying no attention to the danger. On the shore, the man watching began to run and shouted in desperation, "Watch out! The rapids are right there." Still, the young men did not heed his warning. Faster and faster ran the current until the young men were entrapped in the rapids and began to fear. With all the power at their command, they tried to turn the canoe, but it was too late. Over the falls they went, all because they refused to heed the warning voice. So why do I tell you this story? Ancient Israel can be compared to these two young men, right? They had repeated warnings from the prophets, but did they listen to them? They didn't listen to them. The withholding of the blessings from Israel failed to check them in their mad rush to destruction. So in that story, where are we at right now? Where are we at in that story? What's that? Chaos is about to ensue, right? Chaos is about to ensue going forward. So, Jehu did complete the task that God had intended in ridding the northern kingdom of Baal worship. However, because Jehu failed to keep the Lord's law wholeheartedly, we read that in 2 Kings 10 and verse 31, the Lord punished him by giving Israel's land east of the Jordan River to Syria. So let's turn to 2 Kings 13. 2 Kings chapter 13. And we're going to start from here. I'm going to have someone get a volunteer to read verses 1 through 9 of chapter 13. Scott, thank you.
2 Kings 13, 1 through 9. In the 23rd year of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, began to reign over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 17 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and followed the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. He did not depart from them. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them continually into the hand of Hazael, king of Syria, and into the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael. Then Jehoahaz sought the favor of the Lord, and the Lord listened to him. For he saw the oppression of Israel, how the king of Syria oppressed them. Therefore the Lord gave Israel a savior, so that they escaped from the hand of the Syrians, and the people of Israel lived in their homes as formerly. Nevertheless, they did not depart from the sins of the house of Jeroboam, which he made Israel to sin, but walked in them, and the Asherah also remained in Samaria. For there was not left to Jehoahaz an army of more than 50 horsemen and 10 chariots and 10,000 footmen, for the king of Syria had destroyed them and made them like the dust of threshing. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoahaz and all that he did and his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Jehoahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria, and Joash his son reigned in his place.
Thanks, Scott. So Jehoahaz follows in the footsteps of who? We're going to hear this a lot tonight. In the footsteps of Jeroboam. And how did the Lord feel about that? He was angry, right? He was angry, and what punishment did he serve on them? Syria's kept, what's that? Kept invading. And we're going to see, once again, this is going to be very repetitive as we go through this tonight. So you're going to get used to hearing this. But what happened here? Jehoahaz what? What's that? He sought his favor. He didn't have anywhere else to go, right? So he what does he do? He pleads to God, right? Pleads to God. And God listened to him, right? And what did he do? He gave him a savior, or a deliverer, as some say. What does this story resemble? The book that this story resembles. Judges, right? The book of Judges. Very consistent messaging, right? In and out, in and out, in and out, right? It's been the story for a while, and it's continuing to repeat here. So the deliverer, get to my slides here. All right, so hold on. Yeah, here we go. So the deliverer was believed to be the Assyrian king Adam-Nirari III, who existed between 810 through 783 BC. Now, there are a couple of other ideals out there of what happened, but this one seems to be the most appealing. But it's a believed that he created an attack on Syria, which enabled the Israelites to break Syria's control over Israelite territory for the time being, right? For the time being. So we're going to see this back and forth of Israelites getting captured by Syria, bringing some of it back, then they go back and forth. So once they were delivered, so once the Lord listened to Jehoahaz, did the Israelites go back to serving the Lord? They did not, right? No, they did not. They continued on the sins that they had been doing all along. So let's turn to chapter 13. Let's read in 2 Kings 13. We're going to read 10 through 25. We're going to read about Jehoash. I'll read this. 2 Kings 13, verses 10 through 25. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, became king over Israel and Samaria and reigned 16 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, but walked in them. Now the rest of the acts of Joash, all that he did, and his might with which he fought against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Joash rested with his fathers. Then Jeroboam sat on his throne, and Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Verse 14, Elisha had become sick with the illness of which he would die. Then Joash, the king of Israel, came down to him and wept over his face and said, O my father, the chariots of Israel and their horsemen. And Elisha said to him, Take a bow and some arrows. So he took himself a bow and some arrows. Then he said to the king of Israel, Put your hand on the bow. So he put his hand on it, and Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. And he said, Open the east window. And he opened it. Then Elisha said, Shoot. And he shot. And he said, The arrow of the Lord's deliverance and the arrow of the deliverance from Syria, for you must strike the Syrians at Aphek till you have destroyed them. Then he said, Take the arrows. So he took them. And he said to the king of Israel, Strike the ground. So he struck 3 times and stopped. And the man of God was angry with him and said, You should have struck 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck Syria till you had destroyed it. But now you will strike Syria only 3 times. Then Elisha died, and they buried him. And the raiding bands from Moab invaded the land in the spring of the year. So it was, as they were burying a man, that suddenly they spied a band of raiders, and they put the man in the tomb of Elisha. And when the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood on his feet. And Hazael, king of Syria, oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious to them, had compassion on them, and regarded them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and would not yet destroy them or cast them from his presence. Now Hazael, king of Syria, died. Then Ben-Hadad, his son, reigned in his place. And Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, recaptured from the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the cities which he had taken out of the hand of Jehoahaz, his father, by war. 3 times Joash defeated him and recaptured the cities of Israel. Okay, so we've got Jehoash here, who also, and obviously in verse 12, calls him Joash. Says he reigned for 16 years. And what's consistent here with the kings of Israel? He did what? Evil in the sight of the Lord. He said he did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam. So then we have this portion talking about the death of Elisha. And we've got a few things to kind of cover here. So he talks about it in verse 16 where he says, put your hands on the bow. So he puts his hands on it, and Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. What's the resemblance there? What's the purpose of that? Elisha was a man of who? Man of God, right? He was a man of God. Could be some resemblance of the man of God, him now having the power to be able to, if he does follow the directions that Elisha is about to give him, that maybe they would be delivered. But what is and what does Elisha tell him to do? What's that? Smite the ground. And what did he do? Strike the ground, so he struck it what? 3 times. And what's the resemblance here of the 3 times that he struck the ground? Yep. It was how many times that God was going to be with him as he fought against Assyria, correct? Because it says later on in the passage here in the chapter that what? Let me get to it. Yeah. Now Hazael, king of Syria, died, that Ben-Hadad, his son, reigned in his place, and Jehoash, the son of Jehoahaz, recaptured from the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the cities which he had taken out of the hand of Jehoahaz, his father, by the war. 3 times Joash defeated him and recaptured the cities of Israel. So it's indicative of those 3 times. And the purpose of, and he says it here, Elisha told him, if he would have struck the ground 5 to 6 times, as he should have, you would have struck Syria till you had destroyed it. But now you will strike Syria only 3 times. So did he fully follow the orders of the Lord? No, right? I think the thought there is however many arrows he had in his quiver, he should have been firing until he was completely done. That's some of the commentary that I read. He should have had 5 or 6 arrows in his quiver, and he just stopped. Okay, so then we move to, any more questions on that? Thoughts? Okay. So in 2 Kings, I'm not going to read a lot of this just because we have a lot to go over here. But in 2 Kings 14 and through chapter 15 through 38, a very large section here. This section quickly surveys the kings and the selected events of the northern and the southern kingdoms. So the previous 19 chapters up to this point have covered basically a 90-year period of history. But we'll see in these two chapters of 14 and 15, essentially cover 62 years within those 2 chapters. And with everything that we just read, I would say that Israel at this point feels like maybe there's a glimmer of hope. Maybe there's a glimmer of hope at this point because, right, Baal worship had been eradicated in Israel and Judah. In chapter 12, 9 through 15, the temple of the Lord had been repaired. We just read in 13 and verse 25 where the Syrian threat to Israel had been overcome. So would you say at this point Israel's, maybe feeling in a better spot than they had in the past? They're probably feeling like they're in a decent spot. But what do we see in this section that is consistent through everything that we've seen so far. What's that? They're still doing all the things that they were doing before from what they were worshiping. All the sins, all the problems that were established by Jeroboam within Israel continued, even with the change of royal families. We see in 24 through 15 and verse 9 how those royal families change, but it doesn't change the outcome of how they're worshiping. Also, we see in 14 and verse 4, in chapter 14 and verse 4, the other thing that we see here is this says, "However, the high places were not taken away, and the people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places." And then in 15 and verse 4, chapter 15 and verse 4, "Except that the high places were not removed, the people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places." And then in verse 35 of chapter 15, we see in verse 35, "However, the high places were not removed, the people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. He built the upper gate of the house of the Lord." So what are these high places that speaking of here? Say again? Yep, places of idolatrous worship. Yep, that were set up in different spots. I had it on the map just a little bit earlier, but I won't go back to it. So as it pertains to Jeroboam the second, I'm actually going to go over to that. All right, in Jeroboam the second reigns in Israel. Let's turn to 14, verse 23 through 28. 14, verse 23 through 28. Can I get a volunteer to read that? Thank you. Chapter 14, verse 23 through 28.
2 Kings 14, 23 through 28. In the 15th year of Amaziah, the son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, began to reign in Samaria, and reigned 41 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He departed not from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. He restored the coast of Israel from the entering of Hamath unto the sea of the plain, according to the word of the Lord God of Israel, which he spake by the hand of his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, which was of Gath-hepher. For the Lord saw the affliction of Israel, that it was very bitter. For there was not any shut up, nor any left, nor any helper for Israel. And the Lord said not that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, but he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, the son of Judah, of Joash. Now the rest of the acts of Jeroboam and all that he did, and his might, and how he warred, and how he recovered Damascus and Hamath, which belonged to Judah for Israel, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel?
So, question. At the end of Jeroboam II's reign, where was the kingdom of, from a size perspective, where was it at this point? Right? It had been obliterated some, then it got some back, obliterated some, got some back. Where are they at this point?
Said, "Oh, you people, woe to you who you're on your beds of ease
Mm-hmm.
and you're living like you have it perfect now." And that's what they really think.
Yeah.
Even though God's telling them, "Prepare to meet your God," actually, is what he tells them
Yeah.
both in Amos and also in Hosea. He's telling them they better prepare to meet me. But they're looking at it differently. They look, God has actually helped them some. Instead of repenting, even though he has brought other things on them to make them repent, that hadn't done it.
Yeah.
Here he's helped them out, and it still hasn't done it either. So now they just feel like, well, we have it made.
We got it made. Yeah, we've got it made. I mean, I think that is if you I got kids, right? I got a few of them, and when I don't act on something, and I essentially am telling them that's okay, right? I'm telling now. That being said, here the Lord he's acted, went back, he's gone right. He has done. I feel like has done everything that he can. Essentially, tried every vessel that he can to try to get them to understand what he's warning them for, and they just are not getting it whatsoever. And as it pertains to Jeroboam, I mean, even though it does say that he didn't do right in the sight of the Lord. I mean, his greatest accomplishment during this time was the restoration of Israel's boundaries, which was approximately, back to where it was during Solomon's time. Even though he didn't have devotion to the Lord. Right, so they're getting all this reward. They're getting blessings from the Lord, even though they're really not. They're not participating in what He would want them to. Yeah.
This story of Israel, it's a story of the history of the people of Israel, but it's such a lesson for us of God's faithfulness and love, and how He blesses us even when we're not always doing right. And I just think about in verse 13, we read verse 4, when the king prayed to God, he entreated him. It says the Lord listened to him. And then in verse 23, it says the Lord was gracious to them and had compassion on them and turned to them. And then in 14:27, even then it says, but the Lord, He saved them by the hand of Jeroboam. And it is God doing these great things for His people. Like you said, He's calling them back. But it just shows God's faithfulness and how He wants all people to be saved. But what we're going to see is that judgment is coming. I mean, God is giving them, like you said, He's reached out to them on so many occasions, and they just are not willing to be obedient to God. And judgment is coming, and that's what we're about to see. But even in the midst of evil, it's saying these beautiful blessings of God to the people, and they're just ignoring it.
Yeah, just back. I mean, I as you read this, I mean, you can see, you could just feel the patience of God during all of this, and how much mercy and how much grace He has with them, even though it's like they're shoveling dirt in His face over and over and over and over again. Anybody else? Okay, so the waters are starting to really speed up now, right? We're about to see, as we move into the other kings leading up to the fall of Israel, we're about to see some really rapid waters turning over. So let's turn to chapter 15. Chapter 15, and we're going to read verses 8 through 12. And I'm going to get a volunteer for that, if you don't mind. 15, 8 through 12. Thank you.
In the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, became king of Israel and Samaria, and he reigned 6 months. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, as his predecessors had done. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. Shallum, son of Jezbez, conspired against Zechariah. He attacked him in the front of the people, assassinate him, and succeed him as king. The other events of Zechariah's reign are written in the book of Amos and the king of Israel. So the word of the Lord spoken to Jehu was fulfilled. Your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 14th generation.
And so we can continue to see prophecy play out as we read through these verses. It says he reigned for 6 months. Right? He reigned for 6 months. And he did what in the sight of the Lord? Evil. Consistent, right? Says Shallum did what? He conspired against him. So now we're going to start seeing them even what? We're going to start seeing him murdering, turning on each other, right? And what's the reason for that? Why do you believe that this is starting here? Can't act any higher than what you're serving. Yeah, that's good. Peggy, did you have something? This has already been prophesied. Yes, Scott.
This was a characteristic behavior of all the nations around him. And if you were just looking, I know God prophesied about Jehu, but if you were just an outsider looking in, you would say Jehu did the same thing. He was the captain of the guard. He usurped authority and struck down all of
All the people.
Ahab's family and took over the throne.
Yep.
Now, granted, again, I understand God's working in that. He prophesied that, but
From the outside in.
but you see, it kind of set the example. And even when he killed Jezebel, Jezebel called him Zimri, who had done the same thing
Before. Yeah.
and was known. And so now this behavior sort of become normalized within the nation too.
Yeah. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse as we go through this. I mean, I think that's a lot of the reason I went back to our study on Jehu, is because I wanted to start there from the standpoint of, recognizing where this all, that there's a collaboration here that started well before. So Shallum conspired against him and fulfilled the prophecy of Jehu. And we're beginning to see the tides turning south. And the Israelites are really almost becoming desperate. So let's read 13 through 16. Let me get a volunteer for 13 for 2 Kings 15, verse 13 through 16.
Chapter 15 or 16?
15, verse 13 through 16.
Shallum the son of Jabesh became king in the 39th year of Uzziah king of Judah, and he reigned a full month in Samaria. For Menahem the son of Gadi went up from Tirzah, came to Samaria, and struck Shallum the son of Jabesh in Samaria and killed him, and he reigned in his place. Now the rest of the acts of Shallum and the conspiracy which he led, indeed they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Then from Tirzah, Menahem attacked Tifsha, all who were there and its territory. Because they did not surrender, therefore he attacked it. All the women there who were with child he ripped open.
Okay, so we see again. So how long did Shallum last? One month, it says. And he was conspired against, right? By Menahem, and he was struck dead. Okay, so now let's read about Menahem, or Menahem. That's verse 17 through 22. I'll get a volunteer for that. 17 through 22.
In the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Menahem the son of Gadi began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 10 years in Samaria. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart all his days from all the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. Pul the king of Assyria came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, that he might help him to confirm his hold on royal power. Menahem exacted the money from Israel, that is, from all the wealthy men, 50 shekels of silver from every man, to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Now the rest of the deeds of Menahem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Israel? And Menahem slept with his fathers, and Pekahiah, his son, reigned in his place.
Thank you. All right, so you can imagine, right? So we just left from where Israel was out just a minute, kicking their feet up, kicking their feet back, feeling like they were in pretty good spot. And in a short time span, where are they at now? They're losing money because they're having to pay for, essentially support to be able to, keep them away from them. How else are they feeling? Anytime there's change in leadership, and I mean, think about it in anything. If there's heavy turnover in short periods of time when you're used to having longevity, how do things usually go? What's that? A lot of instability, right? You can imagine how they would feel at this point. They had a guy for 6 months and then had a guy for 1 month. Well, now they got respectable. Now they've got a guy that's going to serve for 10 years here. But you can imagine they're probably not feeling pretty good at this point. So Assyrian kings had 2 names, a throne name for Assyria and another one for Babylon. Pul was a Babylonian name of the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser. Here we go. And we see Menahem paying tribute to Pul. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm interrupting.
No, you're
your
good.
Thought. Okay. I was just going to share a thought that I thought that you've kind of said, but I was reiterating it, is I was thinking about Joash, like in Israel, and how he didn't beat the ground. And it's kind of a confusing moment because I'm like, what do I do with that? Didn't really say. I'm like, it's speculation, I guess, even with the arrows. It's like a good guess, I think.
Yeah.
But even then, though, I started looking at more of these, and just every single one of these accounts, it doesn't even mention that they even look for God.
Yeah.
There is no since him, he's about the only one who kind of comes over there, and he's like, and it seems like
who's that?
This Joash.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, basically, this man of God's about to die. I probably need to go be around him for a minute. That's kind of how it feels to me. This is just my interpretation.
Well, he gives him honor, right? He
Yeah.
gives him honor by being there.
But it's also there's no example of him going throughout before Elisha was going to die, and before he was going to be maybe without God's consult. He's not, none of these men seem to, and then we get to the one that Menahem, where I think this is what we struggle with. What he did is we try to take it into our own hands. So we just did it with my finances, or you try to do this with so much things in life. And I think especially America, we do that a lot.
Yeah.
We forget that we don't need God because we have the money.
So blessed.
Yeah, we have the money to handle the medical issues, whatever you want to call it. So I don't know, that's just some thought that just reading these few ones, and I think it'll continue as we continue to read, but I'm sorry to stop you.
No, that was perfect. No, I think that's exactly what this is leading into. So now they, not only was that happening, now they're going to start paying for support as they go into this. Well, what I was getting at there was Pul was the Babylonian name of Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser, who I have up here, a depiction here. And now they're paying tribute to him. Okay, so now he's going to pay tribute to him. Why did they pay tribute? Why would they pay tribute to the Assyrians? So he won't attack them. Yep, it's for protection for the people, right? And empires during this time had what? Empires like Assyria is building up at this point. The Assyrians are building up an empire, and what do they have that others don't? Weapons, large armies, really large armies, and that's about the Assyrians, that they could just essentially show up at your doorstep and say, pay up, or about to obliterate you, which is what's happening here, where they don't truly really have much of an option here, except we see that happen later on, where actually, who was it that spoke on Hezekiah? Was it Curtis or was it Aaron? We turn back to that in him pushing back on that. But he's doing that to keep them safe. If you go back from a historical perspective, Assyria had not had a large army or anything in place since 1200 BC. And this Pileser, he's the first one to really assemble a large army to start this movement of them coming in and taking over that land. Now, why did Egypt and why did the Assyrians, why do they want this land? And that's a respectable question. Why do they want this land? What's important about this land to them? Outside of the fact that land is just, shows your power. Yeah, I think it was called the Levant, and that general area was known for its. You think about the cedars of Lebanon. You think about all the mountainous regions having all the resources. So they've got all these resources that are coming out that they want, right? These Assyrians, these other countries want, so that they can build infrastructure, so they can do all these different things. That's a lot of the reason that they want this land. So I'm going to move quick because I'm going to run out of time here. Aaron's going to kill me. So we see in chapter 15, 23 through 26, that it changes hands to Pekahiah, who also was evil in the sight of the Lord. And then Pekah, an officer of Pekahiah, so he was an officer of him, conspired against him and killed him in the streets of Samaria, in the citadel of the king's house. He kills him. So Pekah then takes over in verses 27 through 31, and again, he also evil in the sight of the Lord. Then he was killed by Hoshea in a conspiracy against him. There was at this time a civil war that was broke out against Judah, where Pekah and the Assyrian king banded together to be able to go after Judah. And you just see this desperation happening, like literal land grabs of just trying to do anything that they can to reserve anything as the tank's going down. I think of it, terrible, situation, but I think of it like, you think about when the Titanic went down. They're grabbing for anything that they can to grab a hold of to be able to try to survive, and it's imminent what's about to happen, right? It's imminent what's about to happen. And at this point in chapter 16, the narrative turns, right? The narrative turns to the defeat and the exile of Israel by Assyria. In chapter 16 through 17, we see the demise of Israel. And ultimately, why was Israel punished by God? Because what? Because of their idolatry. Because they continued with the sins that Jeroboam instituted in Israel. Trish?
They defeated their enemies, and now they've dropped to the point of bribing their enemies, which is a temporary fix if it's a fix at all.
Yeah.
And they still, even when that happens, they still don't turn to God, say, get us out of this.
Yeah.
They just build their idols on higher places and in greener fields.
Well, that's right back to what Cole said earlier, right? Was that, in no place do you see them reaching out to God in any of this. And I think overall, if we want to put application to this as to how we can apply it, and Rachel kind of hit it on the nail on the head, is we have to reach out to God. And if we don't, guess what? Judgment's coming for everyone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Israel. Yeah. 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 It doesn't matter. Yeah, yeah. We had all the example in the world that we wanted to. All right. Thank you for your time. I don't know if Aaron may cover a little bit more of chapter 17 at the end. I kind of wanted to get through